Hello everybody and welcome back to a Tool Tip Tuesday, which actually I'm not really sure you would call it a tool tip. It's more save the paper tip. So I am very slow this month with the virtual crop sketches. I don't know why. I guess I just wasn't inspired by them. Not really sure. But what I have noticed with these sketches, and especially when I ended up on sketch number 4, is that there was not a lot of consideration taken into the paper. And I'm a paper snob. I don't like to use up my paper. I don't know why, but I am just really frugal with my paper. I like it. What I buy, I really like. So I don't want to just have it hidden, basically. So I wanted to just take a minute and talk about the sketch and then talk about ways that when you look at a sketch, you can conserve your paper to make it last longer and just not be so heavy in your scrapbook, I guess. So first I wanted to take a look at this sketch. The very first thing that you'll notice when you look at this sketch is there is a very thin frame around the outside of the sketch. And basically what they're doing is they are taking this piece of paper and then they are layering all of the paper on top of it. And I don't like that because basically you have all of this middle that you can use for your mats or for other different things. So the first thing that I would do in this sketch is I would gut this outer very teeny tiny frame. I would gut it into a 1-inch frame because that's the easiest to cut. And then I would have a smaller piece of paper like this that I can then cut to use for my mat throughout the remainder of the layout. So that's sketch number 1. Or that's point number 1, gut your background paper. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. The second one is if you look at this band that's going all the way across, she chose the measurement 12 by 6.5. I'm not really sure why she did 6.5. I would never do 6.5. I would do 6 because then that way you only need one piece of paper and that will span both sides. So look at those measurements when people are using them. If they're using 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch or 3/4 of an inch, if you can bump it up or down a little bit and it makes it an even number that you can then spread across your page, just do it. So in this case, I just cut my paper in half to 6 inches. So it will span across and it'll be a half an inch shy. I don't think it matters. Okay, then the exact same thing with this white piece of paper. She did 11 3/4 by 11.5. But 6.5, probably more when you put the quarters on it, probably about 7 inches of it is covered. So instead of just putting an entire sheet of paper, you can cut 2 little 1-inch strips on the bottom. And then if you do the math, this ends up being 4.5. So then you can cut 2 4.5 strips on the top. And then you do what we call paper welding. And that's kind of what I'm going to show you with my second page. So here is my page doing exactly what I just told you I did. And if we turn this over, you can see I gutted my frame. So that was the first thing I did, was I gutted my frame. I cut this piece into 6 inches. This is a 4.5 piece. This is a 1-inch piece. When I put my little border element across the top and the bottom, you are never gonna know that this was not a full sheet of paper behind here. Now, there's 2 ways to paper weld, and I'm going to show you both. This is the first way. What I did was I took a junky piece of the cover sheets that we get in our paper collections. Basically, these are all archival safe, so we can use them. You can use them for mats. You can use them anywhere you really need white. You can use it. So what I did in my case was I cut 1-inch strips. Now, these 1-inch strips are covering everywhere where those 2 pieces of paper matched. So you can see here, this is where my 1-inch piece matched my 6.5 piece. And if I don't weld it, there'll be little gaps in there. So you put a little bit, and I use the permanent tape on both sides, and then you weld it down like this, and that gives it more stability. It's still a little bit flimsy, but by the time you put it in your album and you have the other page on the back side, it's completely fine. So that is the first way that you can do it. The second way that you can do it is you can just use a piece, and that's what we're going to do on this page. You can just use a piece of the cover sheet and just adhere directly on here. And I do that a lot, especially this is pretty lightweight paper. So if I'm using a lighter weight paper like this, then I will just adhere everything directly onto that paper to give it a little bit more security. So by doing that, I basically only used 2 pieces of designer paper instead of on the sketch where you would have had to have, if you had followed her measurements, you would have had to use 4 pieces of paper, 2 on each side. So conserve your paper, basically is what I'm saying. So let's just go ahead and do the second page so you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my background page and I'm going to cut a frame. And I'm going to cut a 1-inch frame. And there is, hopefully you guys can see this, there's a white line on the side of the blade and housing unit on your trimmer. From the edge of your housing blade to that white line, it is 1 inch. So I know I've showed you guys this before because I just recently learned this last year and I was like, really? I've been doing this for how many years? But if you line up the back end of your trimmer and then you push down all the way to the front end, ending where the paper is, and you've got it lined up at 1 inch, that is going to give you a 1-inch frame. So you line your paper up on the 1-inch line, you start on the end, push down, stop when you get to this end. That's 1 inch. Turn your paper, do the same thing. Start at the edge of your paper, run it to the edge of your paper, 1 inch. And the last one. That gives me this nice piece of paper that I can use for my mats. And I have my 1-inch frame. I've lost. I mean, I went to the bigger adhesive gun so I wouldn't lose it, and I still lose it. I am using permanent. I usually do use permanent when I'm adhering things, welding things, just because I don't want anything to pop up. And then I'm just lining it up right along the edge of my paper. All right, step 1. Just trying to line it up. So this is what was left after I paper welded my last page. So I'm going to cut 1 inch. And the page was 11 3/4, so I did cut off the side 1/4. So I did cut the little strip earlier. So it is 11 3/4, but now I'm just going to cut 1 inch. And then the next piece, it only needs to be 4.5 inches. So I have 1 inch, I even have leftovers. I have 1 inch left over on my page. Okay, so then again, I'm going to use permanent. And I do try and go vertical so it goes across. We're lining this up so that there's a 1/4 inch around the edge. Then I'm going to take my 6 by 12 instead of it being 6.5 by 12. Again, this is running all the way across the page. And then finally, I'm taking my 4.5 by 12 piece of paper, or by 11 3/4 piece of paper, and I'm adhering it here. And now it goes this. Oh, you know what, you guys? I did it the wrong way. Why didn't you tell me? Let me fix these two. These two pieces need to be lined up on the inner edge instead of the outer edge. So I just need to move it to the inner edge. And again, if you think it's popping up a little bit, which in my case it is because I picked it up and picked it down, you can just run a little bit of repo right along the edge. And then it'll flatten down for you. And again, there is a border element going there, so you're not even going to be able to see it. All right, so now let me bring in my other page. I'm ready to rock and roll now. Try and bring the whole thing in for you. So I'm ready to rock and roll with the rest, right? So now I just have to do my ribbons and my circles and attach all my elements and stuff. But my background piece is completed. I gutted the mat, so I have gutted the background page. So I have all of this cardstock that I can use for mats. And I only used 2 designer sheets of paper. And you honestly, that 1/2 inch, you are not going to be able to tell. And these, why cover 6 inches of your paper when you can use that 6 inches on the other side? So basically what I'm saying to you is when you look at these sketches, here's another example. They have this, in this case, they have this piece, which was the main piece, and they adhered 1-inch strips on top, which is fine. That works fine. But if you have paper that you really love that you don't want to lose, you can cut 2 inches and you would have a 2 by 12 inch strip from the top and bottom that you could use on another page. So it's just a way. Here's another example. She chose to do 4.5. Now see, it's very confusing because on here she did 4 by 12, which is good because you have a 4-inch and an 8-inch piece. So I guess just look at the different measurements. Here's another one. I would always gut that. Here's a 5.5 inch piece. I wouldn't have done 5.5. So basically just look at your sketches, see what makes sense. Save paper if you want to. Don't if you have tons of paper and you don't. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention, show you how to paper weld 2 different ways. I do this way a lot. It gives a little bit more stability than this side does. It just depends, I guess, on what I grab at that minute. So there you have it. Save the paper, look at your measurements, do what makes sense. If it's a 3 3/4, move it to 4. If it's a 1 3/4, you can move it to 2. Whatever makes sense for you to help save paper. All right, you guys, have a great rest of the week. Thank you for spending a little creative time with me, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.